Hey everybody, this is Yasmin, and you're listening to Supershow Sunday.
Hello and welcome back to Ron Talks Tabletop Super Show Sunday. Today's guest is, well, who are you?
Hey everybody, this is Yasmin, government name Yasmin Menchaca, former world champion, former trios champion, former intergalactic champion, and the best six-stop champion, within Supershow.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ron.
So thanks for coming on, and I was aware of a couple of your title reigns in Super Show, and I wanted to talk about that as a topic on my podcast today. So before we get into all of that about being a champion and everything like that, I wanted to ask you, Yaz, what is your wrestling fandom background? Because I know that you grew up watching wrestling, so tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so wrestling has always been in my family. My dad and my brothers were really into it. I grew up in the 90s during the WWF versus the WCW era. I remember recording tapes for my dad so he wouldn't miss anything because he would work at night. But I really didn't get into wrestling until I was about 12 years old, especially when the Hardy Boys kind of pulled me in. When I was 12, I went to my first SmackDown event, and that's when they used to record on Tuesday nights and air them on UPN on Thursdays. And I remember just going as a kid and just being in awe and watching these wrestlers perform these moves and everything about it. Since getting into Super Show, I've dipped my toes back into wrestling. I did take a break for a while, but Super Show kind of pulled me back in. After moving to St. Louis, we've attended a lot of the local indie shows because we do have some names that come through, like Danhausen, Nick Aldis came through, Alex Shelley, and so that has kind of pulled me in as well. Also, I went to my first Royal Rumble since being here, and whenever we have GCW come through, we're most likely going to be there. I'm a big GCW fan. I've seen them plenty of times here and in Chicago, and also my favorite wrestler is Effie, so I always got to see him when he's coming through one of the local indie shows or with GCW.
I didn't know that Effie was your favorite wrestler.
It's always nice to see Effie when he comes through. He also has a competitor in the game, which I like to play with from time to time. I remember getting his autograph. He was at Origins the day before he came to St. Louis, and so a lot of people in Super Show met him, and I was able to get my signed Effie when he came through, and it was just neat talking to him about the game. And every time I see him at these shows, we always talk about Super Show. He always seems to bring it up, so I think it's pretty neat talking Super Show with Effie.
I think that's one of the cool things about this game with all the wrestlers that actually are in the game. And a lot of them seem to really love Super Show, which is a really cool thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah, it's cool. You've already been talking a little bit about Super Show and everything like that. And so my next question for you, yes, is like, what's your Super Show story? How'd you get into it? What do you love about it? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I first found out about Super Show at PAX South 2020. I'm originally from San Antonio, so I was still living down in Texas at that time. This was my first gaming event, first PAX event, and so my wife and I went down there, and we actually ended up meeting Rob Michael Aney from It's Always Sunny across the street from the convention center. He was there promoting one of his shows on Apple TV, and once we were done, we went back over to the convention center and we noticed that the booths were closed. So we just kind of roamed around and I saw SRG Universe Super Show the game. And I was like, oh man, like this is a wrestling card game. Like this is pretty freaking cool. I made a mental note of it because I wanted to go back and demo. So I just kept circling back around the booth Saturday and Sunday until I finally got a demo because they were really busy every time I'd come around. But I just remember going up to Sage and asking for a demo, and the general manager of the San Antonio locals at that time showed me how to play. I ended up buying a two-player box set, and I kind of just went from there. My very first competitor that I used was Papa Wheelie, just based on the simplicity of it. What I love about Super Show is the tight-knit and welcoming community. Whenever new people join the community, a lot of us like to give them tips when it comes to like either deck building or card choices. And really, like a lot of us like to help out new players by just what Steve calls playing it forward, giving them some cards they may need that we might not need anymore because we have too many extras. I've met so many people through this game. My best friend, Angela, known as Candy Ma'am, I've met her through this game. My faction mates, who I just saw in person twice in the past 2 weeks, and just meeting so many people from different backgrounds through this community is great.
That's cool. Did you have a gaming background before Super Show?
I sort of did, but not to where it is now. Right before Super Show, a few months before PAX, my wife was trying to get me into Magic, and I remember her just asking me, "Can we play?" And I'm like, "No, I don't know if I want to play. I don't know if I'm into it." And so she finally got me to play with her collection, and I thought, "Okay, cool, this is like pretty neat." And so that's kind of like where I started. Super Show is really what kind of got me more into games in general, just based on how many conventions I've been to for Super Show has opened me and my wife up to different styles of games. And also that it does help conversating with some Super Show players that are really into tabletop games and getting suggestions from them. So from when I started Super Show, or actually Magic the Gathering, I maybe had like maybe two board games. But if you look at my collection now, I have a library full of games.
Neat. I pretty much knew the answer to that question, but you're the first guest on this podcast that I feel like came primarily from wrestling fandom background. Yeah, everybody else was some sort of a hobby gamer
Hmm.
as well as a wrestling fan. I just think that that's neat. So whether you're in the games or you're a wrestling fan or a combination of both, Super Show is a great game for you, and the community is fantastic, as she and many others have said. Something else that I didn't add here that I wanted to talk about with Super Show and newer players in the community is every year there's this tournament in Super Show called the Rising Stars. And from what I understand, it's primarily for new players, but this past time around, it was for new players or players like returning to the game.
Hmm.
And in this Rising Stars tournament, each Rising Star would be paired up with a coach, and that coach would help them, like maybe pick a competitor to use and help them with their deck tech, and even if they can practice games or whatever advice that they can give to help you succeed. And yes, can you tell me about your Rising Stars experience, particularly this latest one?
Yeah, so my rising star, Cecilia McGregor, also known as HR in the community, was my rising star this year. This was my first time actually coaching in the Rising Stars tournament. I've been in the Rising Stars tournament as a rising star when I first started out, and I was just interested in seeing how it to be a coach. And so working with Cecilia was great. She's already an amazing player before Rising Stars, and working with her was just awesome. We did a lot of deck teching and trying to figure out what competitor she wanted to use. And so she gave me a list of some of the competitors she was interested in. We both kind of zeroed in on using Split version 1, which is very similar to who I was world champ with, my own creation, Runtime Terror. And so we did a lot of deck teching and a lot of practicing too. We would spend some Sunday afternoons just playing games, trying to come up with what we think her opponents would have. And so kind of my own version of a dojo, and it ended up paying off. She ended up winning the tournament, and because of that, it resulted in both of us getting a shot at the US belt. So like till recently, I've always told her if she wanted to deck tech, let me know. I'm more than happy to help her, and that goes with any players too. If they want to deck tech with me, just let me know. My DMs are always open.
Cool. All right, let's get into this. As we've mentioned before, we've been talking around. I know two of the things that I've been aware of are your runs as a six top champion. The belt's called the Deep Six Championship, but six top championship and your world championship. Can you share some highlights of both of these title runs?
Yeah, sure. For Six Stop, I have a couple or a few highlights during that time. With Six Stop, in order for me to win the belt, I had to go through a gauntlet. So myself, along with three other players, made top four in a six-stop tournament, which resulted in a gauntlet to where the first two players, I believe it was the fourth and the third ranked players, would have to face each other, and whoever won that would have to face second place. And then out of that match, it would have resulted in who would face the first place winner, which was myself. So I was kind of like the final boss. And so in that match, I had to face my good friend and current world champion, Candyman Dan. And unfortunately, Dan only had the title of six-stop champion for a few minutes. And I ended up winning the title off of him. And so that moment kind of sticks out to me. And also going into Grand Gathering of that year, I had to defend that belt three times. So it was Friday against Drew Matson, Saturday against, actually, I don't even recall who it was on Saturday. I'm drawing a blank. It'll come back to me. And then on Sunday, I had to face John Polverino. But the funny thing about facing John Polverino for that was John and I both made the finals of the six-stop tournament at Grand Gathering. I had to go 2-0 to win it outright, but we ended up splitting it 1-1, which meant I had to defend my title on the fly the next day. Eventually, I was able to pull it off and I kept my belt. And I went to Ohio with the belt and then I left Ohio with the belt. As for the world title, the first defense that I had was at Grand Gathering, and that was a triad match, again involving John Pulverino. It was myself, John P, and Loudmouth Leo. I ended up, unfortunately, having to hit my good friend Loudmouth with the finish, and I ended up leaving Ohio again with my belt. And so that has stuck with me. Another highlight, but is still
Wait,
controversial.
okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, Grand Gathering 3, which is in 2023,
Hmm.
you went in six stop champion and went out six stop champion.
Yes.
Grand Gathering 4, which was last year, you went in world champion and you left world champion.
Yes.
Both of which, well, six stop, you have multiple defenses. But the world, it was you against two other people.
Hmm.
That's pretty impressive. Go ahead, carry on.
Another highlight, I would say, in regards to my world title reign is a controversial one still to this day. And that's when I played against the Grump at Gen Con 2024. I only live 4 hours away from Indianapolis. And so I drove in Saturday night, defended my belt against the Grump on Sunday. But the controversial part of it was I used a DQ card. So within Super Show, when you are a champion and you use a DQ card and your opponent stops it, you lose the match via DQ, but you still retain the title. And so it's counted as a loss within my record, but I left Indianapolis with my belt. And another highlight would be again involving John Polverino, his Cookies Fortune cash in, which the Cookies Fortune is similar to WWE's Money in the Bank, to where he won the Cookies Fortune tournament at Grand Gathering. He was able to cash in at any time. He also won the Grand Battle at Grand Gathering 2, which gave him the opportunity to face me for the belt. And so the first match that we had was against Runtime Terror, myself, against Ricky Wright, who he won the Grand Battle with. I ended up taking that match, ended up winning. And then he decided to cash in with who he won the Cookies Fortune with, which was El Super Hombre rookie version. And so he went ahead and cashed in, and I was able to win that match as well. I went 2-0 that night and still retained. I was definitely on a high for a while after that.
Yeah, I bet. I remember watching those matches. Well, I've watched all those matches. They were great. That name, John Poverino, just keeps popping up in your history.
Yeah, it's just so funny how during those two title reigns, actually those two are like the greatest reigns that I've had so far out of the belts that I've won. Those two, we just have a lot of history when it comes to six top and the world title.
I like when stories write themselves,
Yeah.
you know? How long was your world title run?
From April 2024 to February, I believe February 2025.
25. Yes, right. April to February. So 10 months, many title matches as a result of that, including a triad to start off your title run.
Hmm.
What I know less about the six stop run because that was before my time at Super Show. How long was that?
The six stop one, I don't remember the exact timeline, but I went up to seven defenses. So it was short though because three of those seven were at Grand Gathering. So I think it was between 4 and 5 months I had that belt.
Well, which is, a great run in and of itself in this game, considering the nature of the dice.
Hmm.
But you had seven defenses in that time, so that's even better. Both amazing
Yeah.
is my point. So how do you prepare for these title matches? And I'm talking, I guess we can talk about both. You had the challenge to become a champion, but I was thinking also like how do you prepare for title matches as a champion? Like what's your philosophy?
When I prepare for title matches, I bounce a lot of ideas, mostly with my wife, Lynn. Her favorite
Yeah.
part of this game is deck teching.
Yeah, Lynn, who's a phenomenal player in and of herself.
Yeah.
She's amazing. Anyway, go ahead.
We do a lot of deck teching here at home. We bounce a lot of ideas. She isn't too active online as I am. And so when I'm deck teching with her, I kind of just let her know this is what I think they're going to be using. This is what I think I should be using. And so we'll just bounce ideas off of each other and we'll go ahead and build a deck thinking what my opponent's going to be using and I'll build mine. I don't even know what she'll have built. And so we'll play a couple times and we'll kind of tweak each other's our own decks, thinking about outcomes such as is my gimmick going to be blank? Is some of my gimmick going to be shut off? What if I'm not losing? What if I'm losing dice rolls? What should I be doing? Should I be looking at specs this early? So a lot of different factors come into play, and we play test a lot. I want to say we maybe do it for about a week, like going up into the match. A lot of playtesting the day of as well, sometimes in the morning or in the afternoon, not too close to start time. I also do brainstorming with my faction mates. Candyman Dan, I would go to him and ask him questions. Drew Matson, Trey Cantrell, people in the Constellation, TVA. I bounce ideas off of them too because I like to think that I'm paying attention to people's playing styles, but these guys pay closer attention than I do, and sometimes things can slip through the cracks. So they're all great players as well, and so it's fun bouncing ideas off of them too. And so that's pretty much how I prepare for title matches. I try to predict what my opponent's going to be using, and I try to build my deck to the best of my abilities to combat that.
A lot of that makes a lot of sense to me. I guess it is beneficial to have a Super Show player in your house. Uh, so yeah, so obviously, like this is not a solo act. You're the one ultimately building the deck. You're the one using the competitor, but it sounds like you have a village,
Yes,
right?
I do. There's people that have helped me, and I like to give them their flowers and show them appreciation and thank them for allowing me to bounce these ideas off of them because, like I said, like there's things that slip through the cracks, and they are the ones that can catch it immediately. So yeah, I'm very thankful to have friends and my wife to do that.
What were some of the highlights and challenges of being a champion?
The highlights was being the second longest running world champion and the amount of defenses I had for six stop. Those two mean a lot to me. Where the biggest challenge was definitely trying to get into the opponent's mindset. And what I mean by that is like having to anticipate their plays and read their style and adapt, especially in the match where you think they're going to be playing a certain style, but there can be times where they throw you off. And so having to adapt to that immediately can kind of be a challenge, but don't get into your own head about it because then if you get too much into your head, then you feel like you've already lost. So, yeah, those would be my biggest challenge and my highlights.
Cool. So yes, what's coming down the line for you?
Yeah, so what's coming up for me is I've got a US title match coming up. I had mentioned that because my Rising Star won and I was her coach, we were both able to get a shot at the US title, which is currently being held by Robert the Brain Dunn, and who's pretty much on a tear right now. And so that feels great that me and Cecilia are going to be able to get a shot at that. And on top of that, I am back in Faction Wars this year after sitting out last year. And my team, the Constellation, has made it to the finals. And so we'll be facing the Crime Wave here soon. Not sure as to when matches will happen, but the deadline for our deck list is tonight. And so me and the Constellation have been preparing and putting our decks together, and hopefully, with my fingers crossed, that we come out as champions of Faction Wars.
That's great. You've mentioned that you're a member of the Constellation faction, great group of people. And every year in Super Show, we have a huge tournament called Faction Wars, where teams get together and play a series of games with stipulations provided by the general manager of the LFF, John Calais. And the winner of the Faction Wars tournament, which goes on for several months, will get LFF title shots. So the different players will get different, the different title shots. Typically, I believe now with the way that the fighter categorization rankings go now, like the world division player will get a world title shot, the underworld shot, so on and so forth. What has that experience been like? Because I know you guys are in the finals against the Crime Wave. What's that been like?
It's been fun. There's moments where I still have to kind of pinch myself to realize that it's real. Our strength of schedule was pretty crazy. So, our first round opponents were just business. I believe they won Faction Wars last year against the higher class.
Yes.
Um, General Manager John Calais, who is the general manager of the World Belt, quote unquote, punished the Constellation because of my shovel act on the Grump, who's a part of the higher class, and Calais is also part of the higher class. And so our punishment was facing just business. And so came down to the wire. Zach went ahead and faced again John Polverino in the trios match, and Zach was able to get the win and closed it out for us. Our next opponents were the Big Picture. With the Big Picture, they're friends of the Constellation, and so they have the same creativity as us. And the same result was Zach closing it out
Mm.
for us. Our third round opponent was the higher class, which was pretty shocking to us. We didn't expect to face them. We honestly thought we were going to face the higher class in the finals. But Calais went ahead and had us face the higher class. And that was a good matchup for us. It was fun playing with them. Also, just being in the group chat with them, it's just the conversations were nice. And there was a lot of joking around, and because sometimes faction wars can be a little bit tense for some teams, but it was fun just talking to the higher class. And Zach again closed it out for us. He seems to be our closer, and
Yeah.
which was kind of bittersweet because he closed it out against Simple Chuck, who is a part of their local play group, the TVA, former Constellation member, and his tag partner. And so closing it out on Chuck was a little bittersweet, but also kind of awesome to get us to into the final against the Crime Wave.
Well, good luck in the Faction Wars finals.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And so I have one final question that I ask all the guests that come onto my podcast. So, Yaz, what is something interesting about you that people may not know about?
Right now, recently, and this one's fun. I just got a new puppy, and my puppy and Drew's puppy and Trey's brother's puppy all come from the same litter. And so we drove down to Alabama to pick up our puppy, and they all are basically cousins. It's pretty funny. And so when I posted pictures of him, people were trying to figure out if he was from the same litter. And so it's gonna be neat seeing all three of them grow up and just seeing their little personalities come through. And so that's pretty interesting. You know, three Constellation members having a puppy from the same litter around.
Yeah. So, how did that happen? How did that come about?
So, so it was a random Monday night, and Trey's brother, I guess, let Drew know that their neighbor has puppies to give away. And so these puppies are half Saint Bernard, half Pyrenees. And if you're not familiar with those breeds, they are huge dogs. Drew has a full Pyrenees, and so he's already familiar with the breed. And so I was like, oh man, like they're pretty cute. Maybe we can pick one up. And so they're like, yeah, like here's some pictures of some dogs. Like, what are you looking at getting? And so we wanted a male dog because we have a female dog. Her name is Frankie, and we wanted to pick up a male puppy. And so I had them with their judgment. I asked them, can you pick like the most chill dog? Because we don't want a crazy one, pretty much. And so they found a puppy that was pretty chill. And so we drove down to Alabama that same weekend from St. Louis down to Alabama, and we met with the owners of the puppy, met the puppy, and then ended up hanging out with TVA. We had dinner by Will's house to meet up with him and his wife Sabrina and visited with the TVA. Ended up hanging out at Chuck's house at the end of the day, and it was funny because I had a match against Simon Davner to see who would get a shot at the Big Picture Hollywood belt. And so having to use Chuck's play area would kind of threw me off. But I ended up winning that match. And so going back to the puppies, yeah, we went down there to pick up the puppies, and the puppy drove back the next night, and he's been here in St. Louis ever since.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So, yes, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so you can find me in the Super Show discussion group. I post in there regularly, or I'll comment in there. You can find me, Yaz Menchaca. I'm usually pretty active in there. That would be a great way to reach out to me is through Facebook. I'm on there a lot, more than I should, but that's the best way to get in contact with me.
All righty. Thank you for listening to the Ron Talks Tabletop Podcast, Super Show Sunday. And until next time, see you later.